Episode 135 of the BIC podcast. On this episode, a smorgasbord of topics. We've done that before. However, we will touch on one of the comments on a previous video inspired me to go down the rabbit hole that is Big Bry. No one calls him Big Bry except as far as we're aware of Big Bry. We will get to the bottom of that. You know, that could be a thing we need to figure out. Also, we'll touch on briefly, there is a whatnot reference involved in there. And Angel Reese slander, question mark, potentially, for litigation purposes. Again, not ours.
Allegedly.
Allegedly. I am merely pointing out what may be there. However, we'll go briefly down that rabbit hole. Silly card of the week. We'll touch on exactly what happened on last week's episode. We'll share some new cards. And then we'll touch on a couple of items we may have picked up and a little bit of other stuff sprinkled in there as well. That and more in this episode of the BIC podcast. Yes, under the watchful eyes of Brett Favre with new USB cable. I've done some tests. It seems to be working properly. So far, so good. We'll monitor it. But
new router, new technology all the way around. Eric's got new glass.
And Eric, yeah, it's all new. Everything new. It's going to be exciting. But, and by the way, just a quick side note, we had an extended pre-show this time around. We had a lot of things to cover. Brandon, if we ever do a Patreon, I'm thinking we should just have the pre-show be rolled into it. The Patreon people can hear all the pre-show. Eric can be sued 47 times for all his slanderous words against everyone.
It's a popular thing. They call them secret episodes on a lot of podcasts or member episodes. And that
Eric can tell us about all his extensive knowledge. Yeah, Eric can tell us all his extensive knowledge of all the lore of Dr. Disrespect. He knows so much.
Whew, yes.
Y'all don't want to know how deep that rabbit hole goes. However, if the Patreon ever happens, I'm telling you, spicy. Anyway, all right, a couple of things we're going to talk about. Let me quickly give you the results from last week's edition of the Silly Card of the Week, brought to us by our friends at AMG Collectibles YouTube channel, amgcollectibles.ca. Now, this week is Canada Day week and the 4th of July. You get a twofer. Very special, extra fancy. But be aware that on the 4th of July, the episode will still happen because Eric hates America. Eric specifically said, I don't give a fuck about the 4th of July. Screw that.
No.
Go Confederacy. Oh. Let's just do a regular Friday episode. I said, fine, Eric, if that's what you want.
No, see.
What I said.
This is going to be uploaded tomorrow, which happens to be July 1st. Which happens to be the month that some very distinguished individuals were born in, brought onto this earth. So it's like y'all are getting the best month now. Out of the whole 12, you're getting the best month right in July. So congratulations.
You're not only getting the baubles and ball cards, formerly known Associated 540 flips. So that's illustrious right there. But you are also getting myself. You are also getting the Burrell. 2 people who are on the back of Victor's book on rookie cards. Noted hobby goats. It's written.
Wes has been on. Yep, Wes.
Honestly, only Eric is the lame-o who wasn't born in July because he sucks. Honestly. It's awful. But nonetheless, we thank our friends at AMG. Now, obviously, the reason I brought it up initially about the whole calendar thing, obviously, AMG will be closed on Canada Day. So that's normally when we record the podcast episode. So right now there is no podcast episode for this week. But one thing that I'm going to do in my infinite generosity, because I want to make sure we don't lose out on the opportunity, what I may do, not promising it fully yet, I will put a community post on that channel just so that you all know that there is no regular podcast episode. However, if I can find some time, and Eric knows I am right now swamped for time. I've got so many things going on. It's so busy right now. But, Brandon, because I like the people so much, I may record a little talking head video where I briefly go into 2425 OPG Platinum, which is actually being released this week. So you may not get a regular episode, but you may still get a little mini breakdown on the product, which will be coming in during the week at AMG. So just throwing that in there. Next week, back to regular episodes. So you may get a little bonus in there if you're interested in hearing about 2425 OPG Platinum. I may throw something in that there for you, quickly, briefly going over a couple of the basics and leaving you a link so that you can check on the checklist. But aside from that, the following week, the Collector, the Scallops Collector, the People, and Bonus Player will be back with myself with a regular episode. So either way, you can check out the links in the description. Thank you to AMG for supporting the podcast and the channel. Now, let's take a look at what last week's episode was. wanted to see a little bit more voting in there, but this time, Eric, you ready? We already talked about technology, but here it is. Get ready.
All right.
Not only am I going to read you what it comes out to, I'm going to show you what it comes out to.
Wow.
Oh my God. I know. So here it is. Here are the results. Normally I read this off for you, but not only that, if you are watching the YouTube, which honestly you should, and I'll talk about this in a second, one reason I'm bringing that up. You can see here the results themselves. I pulled this right from earlier today. We had 28 votes, 2 comments on there, and 3 likes. Yes, I'm a little disappointed, Brandon. I expected more. But hashtag calmness got 14% of the popular vote, 25% for Titans, and Shiny Walls, hashtag Shiny Walls, got 61% of the popular vote. We also did get a comment related to that. So I'll read that comment. Regardless, we counted every vote. These are the results.
Was all of our viewers tired out from Fanatics Fest? I mean, how did we go from like the 50 range to 28?
We got to work on this, man. Guys, like I'm telling you, we're gonna get that community post up there, and I need to see some votes this time around. Although I appreciate the comments and I appreciate the engagement with the post, regardless. But we got to get those votes up there. But Eric, there it is. The results right there. Every vote is counted. These are the real results from this specific edition.
Wonderful.
Now, I know, right? Very exciting. Now, the reason that I made mention of if you watch the YouTube, is for one simple reason. I actually was doing a quick scan. Once in a while, I know that I fall behind on the audio version of it, but once in a while I go into the basically the Spotify thing that feeds out the different episodes. And I said, oh, I must be a couple of weeks off. And I went to check it. I realized, Eric, we're on episode 135. And when I went to look at it, the last episode that I had posted was 124.
So, yeah, we're just a couple off. Not bad.
Just like 3 months. So if you are on the audio feed, you will notice that last week you received 3 episodes as Carlos slowly tries to get caught up. It's probably going to take about a month. So you're going to find out, you're going to find out about the Spring Expo. It's very exciting. Yep. Yep. So I do highly recommend just using the YouTube version. Like, you will get it on time. Just use the YouTube version. Plus you get to see the visuals. Just recommending it, just saying,
sure.
If you insist on the audio version, then you got 3 episodes this past week, including one today.
With the YouTube version, you get all this.
And despite that, I still recommend it. Despite that, I'm still highly recommending it.
On the Spotify, boys and girls, you got to come to the YouTubes to get all this.
Mm-hmm. Indeed. So yeah, Brandon, that was 11 episodes off.
Not bad. Not bad.
Yeah,
probably, there's probably worse out there.
Yeah. Oh, listen, I'm sure there's worse, but I was like, oh, when I looked at it, I was like, oh.
You know what would really throw it off if you just combined all 11 episodes into one episode that just played all the way through?
So basically like an average Friday Live? An average Friday Live?
Yeah. That's all.
It's been like 22 hours of listening.
Yeah. It's making like a twofer. Let's go. Yeah, exactly. Nonetheless. All right. So we're going to get into this week's Silly Card of the Week. We have our candidates here for your approval and your perusal. So we'll start off with this one and we'll go from there. All right. So let me share on the screen here. And what we're going to have is we're going to start with this one. All right, Brandon, this one's yours. Leon Washington, Signs of the Future. What do we need to know? What's going on?
Yeah. So I apologize to the voting committee. I did not come to class prepared this evening, but I did have this one pulled up. Leon here was being a little mischievous during his photo shoot. He plays for the Jets, but I think he thought maybe he was on the Cardinals or Falcons or Eagles, or because he was flying some birds during his photo shoot.
He's telling Eric he's number 1. What's the problem?
Yeah. So, yeah.
There you go, Eric. You're used to that.
We're number 1.
Indeed.
Yeah,
now let's go. It happens. It happens. Second one here, Eric. You're checking out Darren Poopa here, stretching before the game. Yep. Pretty glorious mullet.
Poopa.
Yeah.
Yep. He's stretching out his Poopa. So Darren here is trying to decide, and look at his face. It's like he's in deep thought. Should I go out there and jump in goal and play another game, or should I take up ballet? And he's really struggling because he really, really wants to be in the ballet studio, with the bar and doing his bar exercises and his stretching and his warm-ups so he can do some nice pilates.
Brandon, I'm kind of concerned. Can I bring up a point of order here? Eric is trying to state this in some kind of a, insulting manner. It's like, what did Eric think goaltenders did for stretching exercise? Is this why the Boston Bruins are in the state they're in? You didn't know that they need to stretch beforehand? Is this why you're always injured?
No, don't try to put me in my card picks down because I won last week and you're mad. All right.
I'm still trying to figure out if people actually understood what they were looking at, but we have a comment on that. We'll touch on it in a second. Go ahead.
I just think the way he's looking is like, do I really want to go back out there or do I want to follow my dream of being a prima donna ballerina?
I want to compliment the haircut.
Oh, he's got the mullet from the 90s, man. He's got the hockey hair like crazy.
Indeed. So look, after Eric's picks, I can only assume that when he looks in the mirror, he sees something like this. This is Tom Kelly. This is Tom Kelly of the
good day.
Yeah, this is Tom Kelly of the Braves. 1971 tops. And he seems to be doing well. He seems to be doing well for himself, Eric. I feel strongly.
Yeah, I think he's following his Irish heritage.
Just saying. Just throwing it out there. 1,000-yard stare, 10,000-yard stare, 10,000 mile stare.
All he needs is a little more of a grin, and it'd be perfect.
I hope he's not a closer.
He needed his greenies that morning. Didn't get them. But yes, Tom Kelly, 1971 tops, Braves. Simple, straightforward, to the point. Brandon, doesn't require too much extensive explanation. Just look at the picture.
No.
You'll understand.
A little bit of foolishness, silly cards. Just ridiculousness.
Yeah.
Yep. I feel like it got the job done, I must say. Now, quickly, I did want to touch on, there was a comment that I did also want to make reference to in last week's silly card of the week. And let's see here. Actually, I got two specific ones. First one was from Dan's Vintage Baseball PC. It said, as much as we kid Eric, his noticing the Houston Aeros jersey was pretty damn impressive. He'll get my vote just for that. So I think pity played a role.
Pity. Oh, I'll take pity. I have no problem. Pity potty, baby.
Saying. Yeah, so I'm saying.
Or was Dan just acknowledging that Eric's eyes were back to being useful, that he noticed the Aeros jersey?
Well, except for the part he doesn't know what's going on behind the player. So we're going to get to that in a second. But the other part I was going to say here, I'd be more impressed if he wasn't doing that after a bike ride and subsequent crash concussion. As a result, there's a 50-50 chance he's convinced that the card in question is ultra modern and was planning on getting some new packs before the podcast. I look forward to wagering with him on these upstart New York Islanders are going to win the Stanley Cup in short order. I have a feeling, a gut feeling, the Islanders are due. That Bossy kid is getting his first cup. It's coming.
I think you might be right.
Indeed. So that was one. And then there was another comment that I wanted to touch on that also kind of addressed this a little bit. Let me see if I can find it. I think it was from last week's episode, so I want to make sure I grab it. So I'll quickly touch on some comments from last week's episode because there's some good ones. So, and we always appreciate the comments and the engagement. We always ask. So when you guys give us the comments, we appreciate it and we want to acknowledge them. Double D Vintage here said, fun episode, dudes. Thank you for the entertainment and case hits like Downtownies are stupid. That's right. Eric is stupid. Wait, I think that's what he said. I'm not sure.
Okay.
Ham says, Mike Ham says, my legacy continues. Eric, make sure to tell the ladies I said hello. Kissing emoji. Josh Packham.
He said, wait. What did Ham say?
Ham says, my legacy continues. Comma. Eric, make sure to tell the ladies I said hello.
The ladies I said hello. Okay.
And kissing emoji. Don't forget the kissing emoji.
I kill him.
Josh Packham says, I appreciate that Eric picked the card from Bobby Orr's professional team. Facts. That's right, Josh. This is what I was looking for. Stuke. Thank you, Stuke. That is wood paneling, like Bobble said. They had a blue color. So the background of the silly card of the week. Also gave us some feedback. The 2 shows that I've attended out of 3 possible were well attended. I bought some great stuff and sold a good amount of product. Many YouTubers are saving for the national. I spent my national budget a couple of times this month. Lots to buy and sell right now. I still have 2 collections to sell and a couple of good shows coming up in the next month. I'll hit pause when the family needs it or when I die. Fair. Appreciate the feedback. Also Dan from the main episode, but we showed far more vintage. And my response is, we'll resolve that. Don't worry. We'll fix that problem. And then Oran Cards here said, bravo. So thank you to that. So I wanted to acknowledge comments from last week's episode. So thank you all for participating in that. Great stuff. We appreciate the engagement. All right. I have a card that I can share that is thematically appropriate that I actually picked up this past week. But is there anything you guys wanted to share or add prior? Do you have anything that you would like to share?
I don't know. I don't, because I spent I haven't shown it on this, I guess, but on Friday I showed it. I spent a great deal of money on my custom Reggie Lumlin McFarlane figure. So that
Is
kind of
that accurate?
very
That does not look like the image on all of those Leaf cards.
Well, he had to he used AI to manufacture what it would have looked like had Reggie actually stopped at Puckett.
It is that accurate. We use
that's not the pose that we're looking at.
No, but the setup is that 1987. So the pads, the gear, the helm, everything is 1987 Reggie Lumlin right there. So that cost me a lot of money. And then the Dennis Johnson autograph rookie. So between the two of them, I've taken a break, and I haven't gone on the eBays or anything to be looking at cards, because
a sabbatical, if you will.
I need to take a sabbatical between the two of those things. I need to take a couple of months off.
Well, I have bought 3 cards, but none of them are in my possession, unfortunately.
Fair.
But I spent a sizely sum of $3.20 on COMC and bought 2 cards on there. Then I bought a Robert Kirkham autograph card from 2011. Those who may not know who the hell that is, he is the creator and everything of The Walking Dead. Well, big fan of the show. So
Robert Kirkman, right?
Yeah. And just real quick to touch on this, because Carlos has talked about negotiation tactics and stuff on eBay and everything. Yep. And this card is a great example, because there's been one listed on eBay for 200 or best offer. And I was checking out Terapeak, as we've discussed prior in the show, and I noticed that the same seller had sold one of the cards previously for $60. Now, he apparently had multiple. And then another seller recently had also sold one for $60. So I sent an offer out that I felt was reasonable within that price range, and it was auto declined. So I sent a message out to the seller that had it at 200 or best offer, and I said, hey, tried sending you an offer. It was auto declined. This is what I was sending it at. I've noticed that's what they've sold for. I don't know what your threshold is, but I am an interested buyer if you're willing to work somewhere in that range. And he messages back and said, well, this card doesn't pop off often, which he's not wrong, but he's like, lowest I'll take is 120. And so I kindly replied and said, well, I'm not in any hurry. I will just be patient and wait it out to see if I can find one closer to what they normally sell for. And sure enough, last night, something told me to go on and check, because I did not have a save search set up. And there was one there. I sent an offer out. They countered me back at 65. And so I was able to pick it up in the price range. So moral to the story is the guy's already sold one at $60. I don't know why in the hell he thinks he's going to get double what he sold one for. Or if he's just waiting, hoping that somebody comes along. It might be a case where he's cool with keeping it unless somebody hits the buy it now at 200. He's sold one. So, but anyway, it's one that I've been looking for, and he's right. They don't pop up often. I don't think Kirkman has any other cards that he signed that I've found anyway. He has plenty of other stuff. But I thought the card would be nice because I have some other Walking Dead autos on cards. So
fair. I get you. Now, speaking of, since you did mention the COMC thing, the one I'm going to share is from COMC, but it actually plays into a couple of things. So right now, going on from last month into this month, it is World Series of Poker. I've talked about before. I actually did an episode where I talked about the World Series of Poker and kind of my history with poker in general and my enjoyment of it. I actually have a Poker
Fun.
Go subscription, so I've been enjoying a lot of it. I actually enjoy watching. I will say I appreciate, obviously it's not what it once was in the poker boom days, but I do appreciate that with the commentary and the stuff they've got going on with it and the way they've set up. Now they've got a studio there in the casino when they do a lot of the stuff when they do the final table. They've got the areas set up there where they can have the rail and the people cheering and all. And sometimes it goes into the night. And being a night owl myself, it's actually kind of fun to have it on. I'll literally, like last night, they had the ladies championship, and actually the lady who won it is actually the back-to-back repeat champion, and she had competed in a third prior to that, and she got second place. So her finishes the last 3 years in the ladies championship were second, first, and first. So she's won 2 bracelets out of the last 3 years and $187,000 first place prize. She beat a field of over 1,200 to win that specific championship. Yes, Eric.
Why do they need to separate the sexes in poker?
They
The
don't
only
have to,
people
but
you
they
have-
like having a ladies championship so that they actually wanted to have one tournament that would actually motivate more players to play specifically in it.
I okay. I'm just curious what the reason is, because there shouldn't be any difference between a women's poker player and a men's poker player.
There isn't.
There should be no difference
There
at
isn't.
all whatsoever.
Yeah.
They probably have mixed tournaments, and then they have
They do.
like the single.
Almost all the tournaments prior, aside from that one, all the other tournaments are mixed. Everybody can play.
Don't they do this? Don't they do
Go ahead.
similar things in pool as well? They'll have like a
Yeah.
women's division, men's division, then they'll have like
Yeah.
co-ed mixed division.
Other than
Yeah.
the power of the break, which is minimal, I'm guessing, I don't see how a man can have an advantage over a woman playing pool either. But okay,
Right, that's why I mentioned.
Yeah, I just don't get things like that. But okay,
Yeah. So for the poker one, actually, the event prior was the 50K Players Championship. So $50,000 buy-in, which means high rollers. Basically, you're playing pretty high rollers. The third place finisher was a lady. So the reality is no, they can play in any of them, but they have specifically that ladies championship. I think look, it's one of those things where go take it up with the World Series of Poker Committee.
I was just curious, like what's the? It just doesn't make any reason. I mean,
I think they just want one championship where you have a guaranteed ladies winner to help promote the sport. Like I actually think that's probably the cynical reason.
There you go.
It probably also helps to rank, the men and the women, because when you're playing with mixed sex there, co-ed, a lady might have got put out if she was the only one at the table and it was all men. So really, they're not ranking fairly on with what women's rankings are or men's rankings. So I think it's not bad to split it and just.
I just think it's
it's
above all else, it's a promotional thing, which allows then you to have somebody and in this case, you've got a lady who's actually won back-to-back championships, which is and she's actually from Japan. So you're actually promoting the women's game, and you're also kind of promoting to Asia, because in Japan, poker isn't necessarily built up quite the way it is in North America and a lot of these other places. So having actually a lady from Japan who's been able to win back-to-back and a second place finish. So she's actually been dominant in that particular tournament, and over 1,200 entrants. So that's not, if you think about the variance in No Limit Hold'em, that actually, you can't call that a fluke. You don't get to luck into a 1,200 person field and be either second place or first place 3 consecutive years. So $187,000 for her win, following last year's $170,000.
A lot of patience.
You have to have a lot of patience, because you're going to be running into a lot of players who don't know what they're doing, and you got to basically avoid the car crashes, especially in bigger tournament poker. Anything over 1,000 person field, that's a tough field to get by. You're going to need a little bit of luck, and you're going to need to have good timing and some skill, especially to do it multiple years in a row. The multiple years in a row is actually the most impressive part of that feat. But regardless, I've had those on every evening. They've got different tournaments they're playing out, different formats. The 50K was a mixed. You're playing 8 different poker games. So it's not just no limit. You're playing, PLO, Pot Limit Omaha, and all these other ones. I actually don't know too much. I know a couple of them, but I don't know them too well. So the fact is they had. But here's the sports card link for you. I've got 2 sports card links. The pickup is going to be a sports card link, but I've got one more sports card link for you. One of the commentators that participated in the 50K Players Championship that I was just referring to was Jared Blesnick. If the last name may sound familiar, because he's the owner of Blez Breaking.
Mm-hmm.
He actually, his brother is C. Blez, who's the one that people see out there.
I think
J.
his name's
Blez.
Chad.
Yeah. So he's C. Blez is that one. Jared Blesnick is a poker player. He's a professional poker player who's actually won millions in playing poker, which I think funded the whole thing originally. So he does it with his but he was actually a very good play-by-play commentator, did it very well explaining the games and actually doing, but that's what he's doing right now at the World Series of Poker. He's out there commentating and participating in the World Series of Poker. But in the meantime, the breaking empire, the Blez breaking empire is doing its own thing. But he is actually the one who's been at the poker table and broken boxes where he did the break and broke the box. That was Jared Blesnick.
Yeah,
C. Blesnick is his younger brother. So there's a sports card link for you. And then this, speaking of what we were talking about earlier about Eric and his need for more money, what Eric probably needs to get back into the purchasing game is he needs to get himself his very own moneymaker.
Chris Moneymaker.
Mm-hmm. Indeed. This is 2006 Razor Poker, which was the company owned by Brian Gray. This will come up later. So this was the 2006 Razor Poker thing. And in that one, they have showdown signatures with a variety of different poker notables. If you check the checklist, it's a who's who of the poker boom, including Chris Moneymaker, who was a World Series of Poker winner in 2003, which is in the inscription.
That can't be his real last name, right?
It is his name. He is, in fact, called Chris Moneymaker.
Yep.
And he was an accountant.
I mean, that's what's on his birth certificate.
Yep. And he was an accountant.
All right. There you go.
And his win in the World Series of Poker 2003 launched the poker boom. So there you go. So that is actually one of, I think it's a 37 card set. And I think I need about 10 or 11 more. So I'm making my way through it. I will say, though, a couple of them are going to be kind of tough because I still need Helmuth. That's one. That one's not too bad. I can probably get my hands on that.
He's the loudmouth annoying one.
Yes, he's the poker brat. Yes, very much so. So he's going to be one of the ones that I need. And then another one that I still need is Jerry Buss, former owner of the Lakers. He's actually in that because he was a big poker player and he was hung around a lot of those cash games. So he's in that checklist. And obviously being deceased, his card bumped up a little bit in price. Jennifer Tilly, the actress, who also does a lot of poker, is also in that, as was Cindy Margolis, once the internet's most downloaded female. Eric personally destroyed several computers downloading Cindy Margolis pictures back in the day.
I don't know who she is or what she does, but okay.
Oh, you might have known her by a different name when you were Googling. But the point is that she is in that checklist as well. So it's actually kind of an interesting, hodgepodge. You've got a lot of poker pros that were around during that time, but you also had a lot of celebrities who kind of hung around. And the thing is, I remember from the poker boom, they were on the games. They were basically doing the different tournaments and cash games. So they were featured regularly as appearing in those telecasts back in the day. This is 06 now. So we're approaching 20 years on that. But back then they were all over the map on that. Jennifer Tilly still plays poker, by the way.
I know who that is.
Yes.
I do know some stuff. I know Jennifer.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, she, I think, has been in a long-term relationship with Phil Locke, who is a long-term professional poker player. So I think that's how she kind of got into it. And she's still at it. She's still around playing games. I think they were promoting a cash game that she was involved in that Poker Go does coverage of. So Jennifer Tilly's still around. Over 20 years into it, she's still hanging around and playing it. But she's part of that checklist. So that's kind of a fun pickup. Nothing crazy, but it was something that I like it. I was a big fan of a lot of the poker stuff. And I remember those. So when I go through that checklist, yep, I know who that is. I know who that is. I know who all those people are. So I remember them well.
Just to toss this out there, because I did listen to Scott and you were on there last night, and he had mentioned something about how he doesn't think it's fair that when someone says non-sport that they immediately think Pokemon and the TCG stuff. But I just sat here and mentioned that I bought a Robert Kirkman. You're talking, about building a poker set, which is arguably could or could not be. I don't think many people would, even though it's broadcast on ESPN and stuff, I don't think poker as a sport. Some may suggest otherwise. And Eric showed, Boston Bruins figure, non-sport. So I just wanted to throw that out there because there is a lot of people that are passionate and like to collect non-sport related cards, you know, and it doesn't necessarily mean Pokemon or Magic the Gathering or Yu-Gi-Oh or any of that. There is a lot of non-sports affiliated sets out there. So
Are you done? Are you done talking? You all done?
go ahead.
Okay. I hate you. Go ahead.
Okay.
Yeah. I could have added more, but we got time for that. It's okay. We'll get to it. We'll get to it. I've got more. So anyway, bottom line, that was the reason for the pickup. I wanted to kind of because I wanted to encapsulate a couple of different things. So I'm still slowly chipping away at that set. Still got some ones that I got to track down. I'm looking forward to finishing that set though. That one, Brandon, is gonna be fun for me because I'll be like, as soon as I go through that checklist, I'll be able to be like, I remember so and so.
What year did you say it was?
06.
So yeah, that's almost technically vintage now.
Vintage.
Yeah, but that was like we discussed, you know, well, I think it was the last episode. That was the heyday when it was big. Like it was on TV all the time. Like as soon as you said Moneymaker, you know, even I knew what his first name and stuff was because I was following along with it. I was online playing the free games, just having fun. It was a big thing back then. And could you imagine? I was thinking about this because a lot of the sites and stuff got shut down. I think they might have opened a few back up. But could you imagine if it could have hit big again like that during when we were all at home during the pandemic? That would have been massive. Because like everybody was at home, they couldn't go out do nothing, but everybody could have gotten online and played poker. Like,
oh man,
that would have been massive.
So actually, you reminded me indirectly. I wanted to showcase the Moneymaker one because it has a very clear story and it's very easy to link it to it. But the week prior, I didn't showcase this. But from the same set, I also picked up this one. The name will not be as familiar, but I'll explain the context with what we just talked about. There is actually a connection to it. So this is Michael Mizrachi. I probably butchered that, but did my best. So, yeah, he is known as the Grinder. That's his nickname. He's the Grinder.
The Grinder. Okay.
The Grinder. This is again the 06 Razor. It's the same set as the Moneymaker card. The reason I'm bringing this up is that he was obviously a touring pro. He was doing his stuff. He was a lot of cash games. That's basically what his nickname was known from. But he also played in tournaments. He was a mainstay in a lot of these tournaments back then. In that 50K championship that I just talked about, he was actually the winner of this year's 50K championship. So obviously he's still around. He's still participating. That's actually the fourth of the 50K players championships that he's won. That's his fourth World Series of Poker bracelet for that one specific tournament. It's very rare that anybody wins 4 bracelets for any one tournament. Doesn't matter what it is, especially a 50K high end. When you're in a 50K high end, you've got either a bunch of rich people and you've also got a lot of pros. Because what they're doing there, Eric, with the higher buy-in, is they're basically trying to weed out the chaff. Because you don't want to play in a 50K buy-in if you're not serious about your game, especially a 50K buy-in for mixed poker. It's not just no limit. You're playing a bunch of these other games. And what's going to happen, some people are really good at a certain game, but they're garbage at these other games. The problem is you have to be able to play all the games. You must be able to play them effectively because the game keeps rotating as all the way through the tournament. So you cannot simply be good at one discipline, so to speak. You must be good at multiple disciplines, or at least passable in a couple, to avoid your weaknesses and stay away from losing your money on the ones you're not good at and take advantage of. So some players are going to be excellent at certain ones, so they'll take advantage of that. But other players are killers in these other games and they'll destroy you. 7-card stud, PLO, Raz. To people who don't know too much about that, you can go Google them. There's a bunch of different poker variants, but they're different rules, different things that you're looking for, different strategies. You can't simply be good at one thing. So to win this, that's the Poker Players Championship. You got to be real good. It would
be like going to the Olympics and having to be decent at multiple various sports.
Yeah. So it's kind of like a decathlon kind of deal.
It's a decathlon.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Of sorts, yeah.
Okay.
But those people train for that. These poker players really aren't training necessarily for all the games.
Yeah. And a lot of them, like I said, you got to know all the rules for all the games because otherwise you won't know what you're doing. That's a good way to lose. And for the buy-in that you're doing, hopefully you've done at least your homework to get good on the games that you understand well. Take advantage of your strengths, but also make sure to shore up your weaknesses. Otherwise, you're going to lose a lot of money. That's a quick way to lose $50,000 faster than a break. Just saying. Think about it.
They probably, I haven't watched it in a while, but I would guess just with the way hockey and like basketball and everything has changed, they probably have a lot of patches like pinned to their hats and shirts and stuff for sponsorships now. I bet. Yeah. I was
There was a
figuring
guy.
like,
There was a guy who had a suit jacket that was like that looked like NASCAR, like a NASCAR race.
that's what
It
I
was
was thinking. 'Cause
hysterical. It was
you're
hysterical.
talking about, the 50,000. I'm sitting here thinking, I'm like, I'm wondering if they even have to comp that anymore because they probably are getting chipped enough with little advertisements on their clothing. So yeah, that makes sense.
No, it's true. Like you can totally, yeah, you can be a sponsored pro playing in that. But look, I'll say there was one of the players. His name escapes me right now because I wasn't too familiar with him. I haven't been as deep into it as I was back in the day, but I still watch here and there. But there was one player, or one pro, who has over $77 million in tournament winnings.
Hmm.
So like he's won a lot of high end tournaments and won big payouts because the biggest of the big, because I think for that Poker Players Championship, I think first prize was multi-millions. I think it was like 3 or 4 million. Yeah, I think when Chris Moneymaker won, it was a big deal because of $1 million first prize. Now
Hmm.
you're talking about the World Series of Poker is not one event. It's a bunch of events. The main event is the most famous. This $10,000 buy-in, no limit hold'em. It's got 10,000 people in it, all that stuff. But there's a bunch of these other events and you can win these bracelets to all these other events. If you're a good enough player, you're probably going to play in a bunch of these tournaments. So, but that means a bunch of those tournaments have $1 million plus prizes. Again, we're not in the poker boom anymore, but you still have multi-million-dollar tournaments where you can win as if you're the champion in that one. So you can still do very well. Like I said, you're almost making Eric like Bud money. Like it's wild. It's a lot. Just saying.
Yeah.
So wanted to touch on that. Now let's shift over. One of the things that I wanted to touch on, we can do it briefly here. We'll this mini segment shall be known as, for Eric's sake, the Hockeys. That'll be the name of the segment. So Eric, how's Brad Marchand doing? He's coming back to Bruins, right?
That prediction didn't turn out quite as I had hoped. He signed today for a long-term deal, I think 6 years, which brings him to the age of 43 to stay with the Florida Panthers. So that was very surprising that he would get a deal that long. I'm sure it has to do with the money and spreading it out and all that, but
Like
I really shut up. I already told you I don't like you. So I honestly thought, because he's been here since he was like 18 years old or whatever it was, and his family is here, his wife, kids, got roots here, that he won the cup, come back here, put the C back on his chest, play 3 more seasons, and that'd be it. That's kind of what I foresaw, but he got a great deal. I think he had a lot of fun down there. And I guess the wife and kids must have okayed it, because at this point you definitely gotta, when you're a veteran, you can kind of pick and choose a little bit more of where you want to go, and you gotta include your family in those decisions. So I'm guessing that his family supported him staying in Florida. So,
well, back to the pre-show discussions we have, there was a player that you mentioned. Was it Marner?
yeah,
Heading
Mitch
to
Marner.
Vegas, and Carlos mentioned the tax benefit making the salary better. Florida's another scenario of that, so it probably benefited him, in that sense as well. So
Massachusetts has what they call a millionaire's tax, and a lot of businesses and wealthy people and athletes are leaving and or not coming to Massachusetts, and it's a problem because the politicians here have targeted the wealthy, which includes our athletes, and athletes don't want to come to Massachusetts because you are going to get targeted and taxed extra because of what is called the millionaire's tax here, when you can go to Texas or you can go to Florida or, maybe a handful of other states and keep all of your money. And it doesn't take a brain surgeon to figure out, what you'd rather do. I mean, we're highly taxed here in Massachusetts, even, myself. So I don't have to pay the millionaire's tax, obviously, but it's high taxes. I'd be a lot happier if we, had Florida's tax program and I didn't get taxed as high. That'd be great.
All I'm hearing is that Eric wants to be traded to Florida so he can hang out with Ham. Because
Hmm.
I happen to know that the Boston Bruins could have offered $100 million and he would have said, fuck that. I'd rather hang out with Ham. That's what I heard. It's a rumor, but
No.
that's what I've heard on my end of it.
I think
And
it's a
also, as it
win-win
turns
stuff.
out, Brad Marchand's wife also wanted to hang out with Ham. It's weird.
That might be true. He's a ladies' man. That's just, I'm very jealous.
I'm just saying, like, Brandon, like, all I'm hearing from Eric are excuses.
Yeah.
Because really, the alternative was, oh, great, I get to hang out in Boston with Eric.
Yeah.
Oh, I never mind. Like, Florida, I'd take $1. I'd do it for Klondike Bar. Just keep me in Florida.
There was probably something like, if you come back to Boston, you got to go to Sports World and do
No
the
dice. I'm out.
signings, and that
I'm out.
Eric guy is going to be there. And
I'm out.
chocolate sticks, yada yada. Yeah.
Ray Bork threw himself into a zombie horde just to avoid that, and it still hasn't saved him.
You can't beat the winter weather in Florida. So during hockey season, the weather in Florida is fantastic. I wouldn't go there in the summer for any reason, but you can't beat the winters in Florida.
Indeed. Yes, so that was that one. And then Mitch Marner right now is basically it's all but done, but all the reporting has been that they've got a sign and trade going to Vegas. Looks like 8 years at basically 12 per, so $96 million. Again, nearly the same amount as Eric's paying for the light button. It's quite a bit. So, makes sense. I get it from the perspective of both sides, to be honest, because Toronto otherwise would have lost him in free agency for nothing. So reality, it's just like, now I believe, like I said, from my brief snippet, like a glance at the rules, I believe by the team that already drafted you signing you, that offered you the option of the additional year. So by doing it this way, he actually gets an additional year at that. And then Vegas being, in the same kind of tax bracket category of like minimal income tax. Again, it's actually like it's more money. So the 12 million is actually a little bit better. But then on top of it, you also get the additional year. So you're guaranteeing locking that in, that additional. Nearly $100 million. That's a lot of money. That's, pretty solid. And then at the same time, Toronto will get, I think it's, I forget the player, something Wah, coming back the other way. So again, they get something for it as well. It's kind of like a mutually agreeable, we at least get something out of the deal. You go there, sign and trade, literally for that kind of an arrangement prior to free agency kicking in. So I get it from that perspective. I think what will be interesting, and we'll monitor it this upcoming hockey season. If Marner obviously has a great regular season, then the question is what happens in the playoffs. Vegas is a very good team. Vegas is a well-built, solid team. So if he can contribute in a solid way, there will be, Brandon, the salt mines around me shall be in full production. Because there are so many people in the Torontos that are rooting for horrific failure. They are hoping for the Schadenfreude. Little do they have my Schadenfreude powers. I don't believe they have them. But they are going to try. They're going to try to run the salt mines as I have run the salt mines.
Oh, yeah. They don't want to see him be successful.
Mm-hmm.
They're basically kicking him out of town, throwing him out, chasing him out, tar and feather, put him on a rail and off you go. And
but they're giving him a gift at almost $100 million. Like,
well, it's kind of a mutual, but Brandon, though, I was kind of making the point that it's kind of mutual. It's like, yes, we'll do that, because in reality, he can tell him to fuck off and just go and sign the deal. But he would lose the additional year of that ability to have that. So again, it's kind of like, I think they came together and said, look, this is the only way we're both going to get something out of this. You do this for us, we'll give you that. So basically, we'll do the sign and trade to whoever you want, and then at least we get something in return. And then in turn, you get the additional year.
But Eric said they're kicking him out of town. I mean, I would be
the franchise aren't necessarily.
Yeah, I was referring more to the fan base.
Yeah, the fan base, yes.
The fan base wants him gone.
Yes, correct.
So, you know, he's not welcome there anymore. So
Brandon, to your point, I have tried in my career to find the situation where they would want me gone at nearly $100 million. I've been trying.
yeah.
It's not a lack of effort. I'm like, I am willing to end this for $96 million over 8 years. Fine. Done. Done.
Yeah, I don't think you have to like think about that much. It's probably he probably had the ink like ready to go.
But let's be honest, Brandon. Like, he's going to Vegas. Bobby and I have already discussed if the National had gone to Vegas, like we would have been in.
Well, that was the other thing. Like you're talking about, the money could be more. I mean, technically, it could be a lot more. You know, if he wanted to go hit the strip, you know, who knows? And
Brandon,
I'm not
if
saying
he gets any kind
idea,
of
but
Brandon, if he gets any kind of a signing bonus in this deal, the World Series of Poker is still on. The main event hasn't started yet, bro.
he might have
Eric,
an off-season,
let's go. We can get a
an
couple more
off-season
million.
gig, you know,
We can get a couple more million. Let's go. It's very exciting. Not gonna lie, very exciting. So yes, so that's it. We'll touch on those two for now. That'll be it. I just thought it was very funny, and I got a bit of a kick about it. You know, more to come in the future, but we don't need to spend too much time talking about the hockeys as if it was a real sport. All right, we're gonna move on. I wanted to touch on something that came about as a result, again, of the comments, and I always appreciate when we've got the comments on there. So this is kind of longtime viewer and listener. This is Brian North, and Brian North here asked a question off of the last live stream and said, question, hey, Carlos, any plans to comment on the Brian Gray's podcast, which we'll touch on here in a second. In brackets, by the way, I appreciate the in brackets. In brackets, he's someone who actually published a second podcast episode. The shade! The shade! I felt that all the way in SGC Pete's Bones. The shade! And his story about Upper Deck / Richard McWilliam. Not sure if you have anything to add, but I thought the story was fascinating, which is fair. Okay, so let me quickly share that one. Did you appreciate the little SGC shade there? That was pretty good. I kind of like that. Got to a second podcast episode. I'm just saying. All right, there we go. Let's share this. I'll share this here, and then we'll talk about it. So the podcast is this. Big Bri, the deal guy. No holds barred. There you go. All right, here's the thing. Being 100% truthful, I did not know that he had actually published a podcast. So prior to reading this comment, I was unaware. I did not realize that was even a thing. But you can see Big Bri, as he calls himself, Brian Gray. I'm not going to call him Big Bri again, other than for the title purposes. That's it. But anyway, so he's got his whole, like, you know, little cartoon there and everything.
Hold on.
It's very exciting.
I got to interrupt right off the bat.
Are you excited about the slab in the corner?
I see the PSA slab, and I was expecting the black label.
Yeah, you would expect him to have the
AI dropped the ball on that one.
Oh yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
The weekend, the Saturday morning black label. Oh yeah, baby.
Yep. So anyway, it's got two specific. So right now he's got two podcast episodes as reference here. First one is King Richard and I, Dirty Little Secrets, talking about Richard McWilliam, discussing that. I'll touch on it briefly. So what I'll do, here's my commitment. Here's what I'll do for you. Since I did listen to it, but the guys haven't had the chance to listen to it. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to assign us a little bit of homework. I'm going to give everybody a week. I'm going to put a link in the description. I'm going to give everybody a week to listen to episode 1, because this is directly related to Richard McWilliam, Upper Deck, Brian Gray's association with it, and stories he wanted to tell with it. It's just under an hour. It's 59 minutes. You could probably skip the first 5 minutes or so, because it's self-aggrandizing, self-promotion, aka I would recommend kind of skimming through that a little bit. But so approximately 50 minutes or so, give or take. And it talks about different stories. His association, Razor, is referenced in this. So if you paid attention, I did make reference to that. It is referenced in this briefly as how Razor came about. There is an Upper Deck connection. So it's a little spoiler on that. And then also discussing some other items that he shared in this one. Of course, he makes it up to be this gigantic, grandiose thing that'll shake the hobby. It's more like, yeah, a guy who has kind of a shady track record and history in the hobby. We're speaking of more shadiness. Yes, go on. Sure. Great. It's very similar to, like I said, when I did the discussion with him talking about the discussion with Bill Mastro. And how for the first time ever, Bill Mastro explained this. Like, no, actually, he did explain this already to Rick Probstein. You are reiterating the story. He is repeating the story, but it is the same story he said to Rick Probstein prior. So no no, Brian Gray, you are not the first person to talk about this. Now, the stories that pertain to Brian Gray himself, saying his participation in whatever he's talking about, yes, that's firsthand account. That's him saying what he did or didn't do or whatever. That perfectly fine. Again, we'll take it with a grain of salt because, track record and history. But it is an interesting story to hear if you're interested. So I will leave that in there in the link in the description to it so you can check it out for yourself and see how you feel about it. And then next week, we'll talk about it a little bit more length. So I think I wanted to kind of share that. Let's give everybody a week to absorb it and listen to it. And anybody who's listening to this, I'll leave a link to it so that you can check it out as well. And we'll come back next week and we'll do a little kind of podcast review on episode 1 of Big Bride, the Deal Guy. But I do want to discuss episode 2 because I did listen to episode 2 briefly and I got a bit of a kick out of it. And there's a couple of specific things that I wanted to touch on. So the episode is entitled Roll Call, Fallen Angel Reese, plus No Bass Breaks, plus Ignorance and Influencers. Ooh, fancy. There's a lot going on there, man. There's a lot going on there.
Don't shade at you, Eric.
I know. Goddamn, Eric. But anyway, so what happened is, I'll give you the short version. And if you want to listen to episode 2, you certainly can as well. The link will take you to both, so I'll make sure you have that. So in episode 2, the issue with Angel Reese, per Brian Gray, was that he had signed an exclusive autograph deal with Angel Reese. This is prior to her current deal, obviously with Panini and stuff like that. And apparently he had gotten it when I think she was still in, what is it? What was the school?
It was LSU, right?
I think it was LSU. Thank you. Yes. So anyway, when she was at LSU, so she was still a college, prospect. They were looking at the possibilities of it. He was able to get her to sign a deal. And I want to say the deal was for 6 figures. I want to say basically it was a decent deal, especially NIL kind of thing, and apparently, according to Brian Gray, they had taken her to the National and were trying to give her like the little red carpet treatment and everything. Now, again, per Brian Gray, I put this as the caveat to everything. Apparently, all she did was whine, complain, whine. And then by the time it was done, she had reluctantly done what was asked of her in terms of the autographs and everything. But then, again, per Brian Gray, allegedly, her agent came and effectively gave him a whole sob story about how she didn't want to deal with it. She didn't want to do any of the autographs or anything. She was done with it and all that. Could you find it in your heart to let her out of this contract, basically? And then per Brian Gray, he did. And then she immediately signed with Panini for more money. So again, take it with a grain of salt. It is what it is. That's basically the story of why Brian Gray is a fan of Angel Reese, the same way that Eric is a big fan of Tom Brady. Because he cost her money.
But Brady,
she cost him money. But yes.
But Tom Brady was really, really good at the sport he participated in. And Angel Reese is not.
She's very good at getting her own rebounds off missed shots.
Those are called me-bounds.
But she's very good at that.
Yes, she is the all-time greatest me-bounder in history. She has the athletic coordination of a newborn giraffe.
Wow. Eric basketball scout has spoken. But anyway, so that was the Angel Reese story in episode 2. And you're more than welcome to check it out. But effectively, I just gave you the super, super high level. There were a lot more expletives involved in that. I'm giving you the cleaned up version. I'm giving you the PG-13 version. Okay. The other piece, though, that I thought was funny, remember the rest of the episode title, No Bass Breaks. So Brian Gray goes on a crusade against whatnot. You see, Eric, I'm bringing it all together.
Good. Someone needs to.
But his crusade against whatnot, you know what it is about, Eric? It's not about shady breakers doing questionable things. It's not about shady breakers talking about imaginary underage children. It's not about that. No, you know what it is about, Eric? It's about breakers who take high-level breaks in high-level products and only send base. Brian Gray will not stand for this. This is unacceptable. You will not send me your worthless base cards. I will boycott anyone who sends me worthless base cards. By the way, check out the episode for yourself. You'll see that this is actually what he's ranting about. Send me these worthless base cards and I will burn your house to the ground. Allegedly, basically.
So
the rest of it, though, is fine. Whatnot is cool. We love Whatnot.
Yeah,
Whatnot's
cool.
the best.
Okay.
But the base card thing, unacceptable, a bridge too far.
So is that they add base cards to the order that you purchased? So you bought something expensive and then
he's talking about, like, let's say you on a high-end break,
okay,
and you hit nothing, and then they send you base cards so that you at least get something as opposed to nothing. But he's very angry that they send base cards.
Okay. What would he prefer if you won nothing, but you picked the Mets, and that's all that came out for the Mets, and you got what you paid for? He
So
doesn't
what
want
Eric,
that.
what he proposes is that you take on the angle of it's the thought that counts. So let's say you get the Mets and you get nothing. Well, then what if we send you an 88 Topps Greg Jeffries in a PSA 10? I'm making this up. I'm just giving the point is to include something in there that
That was the hottest card in the world. All right.
yeah. My point here is that the argument is to include something that is above a base. So Greg Jeffries jersey card, an autographed card of Pete Alonso that's like $20, as opposed to the base card. Give him a $20 Pete Alonso auto.
No, that's stupid.
Well,
Okay,
then
so
fight Big Bri about it. What do you want me? I'm just telling. I'm giving you his position.
The whole point of breaking is it is a gamble. You are gambling. Everyone agrees with it. You are gambling. When you go to Vegas and you bet and you lose, you don't get to go to the casino and say, I want something for my, for my participation. I want a participation trophy at the blackjack table. You got to give me something. No, I don't.
So I know, and I don't know of all of them because I don't get on there and watch the shit. But when I was onboarded to be able to sell on Whatnot, which I never did, in their rules, you are supposed to, even if somebody doesn't get anything, you still have to give them something. So that's technically part of their rules. But to Brian Gray's point, okay, I hate to even do this, but I'm going to take defense of breakers for a second, because how in the hell are they supposed to keep on hand something for every team, because they don't know going into the break who's going to get something and who isn't? How are they supposed to keep something for every team on hand?
Right.
And then also, to top it off, then not be accused of keeping cards or whatever else because they have hits that they're just giving out free. And I mean, base cards, most cases, a lot of people don't care if the breaker doesn't send the base, so they probably keep stacks and stacks and stacks of that shit just so they can send them out. So I get it sucks, but they're following the rules of the app. They're sending something as they're supposed to. You took, like, if you go to the gas station and you buy a scratch off and you don't hit anything, do you go back inside and say, hey, I want a candy bar or I want a soda because I paid for this lottery ticket and I didn't hit anything? I mean, it's the same damn thing when you
Right.
get down to it.
Exactly.
You just paid for a scratch off ticket and you lost. So there you go.
No, that's stupid. I'm sorry. That's ludicrous.
Well, you listen. You fight Brian Gray on this as much as you like. You know,
I
you
would,
can go to Thunderdome and wrestle him.
I haven't talked to him in a couple of years, but I went back and forth with him a couple of times.
Mhm.
But I haven't talked to him in.
If you pay $50,000 to enter that poker tournament and you get booted out, you're screwed out of $50,000.
I want $20,000 at least back. No, that's the rule. You know, I want at least 20,000 back if I lose.
Mhm.
Just because.
Now, all that said, there is a bunch of different breakers who do actually say if you get skunked, because there's a difference between getting minimal and getting absolutely skunked in a high level break. They will basically create these little packs of cards, basically, that are just kind of like, if you get completely skunked, here you go. You guys, because the intention is to get repeat business. They basically don't want you to completely end up. So basically, they'll say at the bare minimum, if you get absolutely skunked, we've got these little packs that we've created here. It's not obviously going to offset the difference, but it is, you get something as opposed to you get completely zero, nothing.
But here's the thing, and Brian has been in this hobby supposedly long enough that he would know this. Before Whatnot, before the live selling and all of that stuff, these live platforms that are out there now, when it was people breaking on YouTube or Twitch or whatever, The most you ever got in a high-end break was maybe $5 break credit for a future break if you didn't get anything. And I'm talking you didn't hit National Treasures or Flawless or something, you were getting $5 credit, maybe $10 if they were generous. But it wasn't much. It wasn't anywhere near like what you actually paid to get in the break. It was just a courtesy credit for future breaking. So he's been around long enough to know this. I think part of it is there is a lot more breakers now. Like, I mean, way more than we used to have in the hobby. And he's probably looking at it as the base cards are worthless or they're a slap in the face or whatever. They're a consolation prize. And so he is pushing for something better.
Mhm.
But it's always been crap.
Yeah, and I don't disagree with any of that. The only thing that I would point out, the reason why I found this tremendously amusing, is that when we're referring to some of these platforms, Whatnot being one of them, this is not the hill that I need you to die on. Like,
Right,
out of
yeah.
all the things, I got to be honest, Eric, if I'm going to list the list of concerns that I have here, like base cards as, filler at the, it's
Wait.
very low on my list of things that I'm worried
Hold on.
about here.
How about as a former card manufacturing company owner, why doesn't he go after the card manufacturers and hold them accountable for these high-end boxes or cases that they are required to have at least one card, even if it's a napkin patch relic or whatever, so that way everybody gets something. Everybody gets a participation trophy. How about he goes after them and makes it to where nobody is left out?
Eric loves participation trophies.
No, I
He
do
lives
not.
for them.
I
It
didn't
would
even
make things easier.
he's this year for my team because I didn't think anybody deserved them.
Eric, the Boston Bruins have been getting participation trophies for most of their existence. What's the problem? You were there. You tried.
This Boston Bruins hate tonight needs to stop. You two are pissing me off.
It's so good. Like, you see how Brandon, you see how like it was like an RKO out of nowhere, like literally like.
Listen, I know the
angles.
Bruins suck. I've been saying it the entire year. I never once defended them. They have completely sucked. Hopefully in September they won't suck.
They didn't completely suck because they did have a
suck.
player. They had a player that left and went to another team and won the Stanley Cup. So there was
and then re-signed with them because it was better.
There was a
it didn't come back
of success from Boston.
Yeah. And said, I'm not coming back there because you guys suck.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah.
But look, Eric, it's not all bad. It is not all bad. If it's any consolation at all, we talked about it briefly on Friday. If it's any consolation at all, a great injustice was finally resolved. The greatest living Boston Bruin of all time, Jumbo Joe Thornton, is now going to the Hall of Fame where he belongs. Yes. Justice. Finally, great justice. Wonderful. Splendid. And last one.
So what you're saying is even the Hall of Fame has participation trophies.
Oh, totally. 100%. Yeah. So anyway, how do you think Bobby Orr got in there and they even discussed the Boston Bruins thing? It was the Chicago Blackhawks that made him a Hall of Famer. I don't even know what the hell else you're talking about here. I don't even know, but I'm moving on. And then the last thing was ignorance and influencer, which is complaining about influencers. So Eric, stop being an influencer. Stop sucking. Per Big Bry. Okay? Stop sucking.
Well, I don't know if I can help that. I've been
not saying that, but go ahead.
I've been an influencer now for a few years here, and I believe that at every opportunity I have sucked. So
you have indeed. You have indeed.
I don't see that improving.
So I'm going to shift gears a little bit just for a second. Because after last night, after I did the reveal thing and everything, and seeing some of the comments that played out there towards the end, especially, I went downstairs and, I was talking to the wife and everything. I have never seen myself as an influencer. I've never thought of myself as one. I've never felt like I was one. But then when I was reading the comments, and to think that if I was to openly offer another, like, let's just hypothetically say that I went and started doing submissions for another company, and knowing that people would actually follow along with that for whatever reason, it started making me question, was I actually an influencer by, like, did I have an influence on people abusing SGC? And I never looked at myself that way, but I guess there was a
Is,
possibility of it.
is trust and comfortability with you considered influence?
I don't, that's why I'm like,
You know,
that's
I
why I
think
brought it up and asked,
I
because I
think
never seen
you did.
myself as like,
I think you did a really good job for your customers. Um, you definitely had a customer first philosophy. You worked hard for your customers, and I think that built your, I don't call it a business, whatever, but and then you had a following, um, because of the work you put in and the trust you earned. So, is that influence? Yeah,
that's a good question.
I guess
Look,
because
since you brought it up, I figure this.
I,
So
I
guys,
would bet
I think we've closed off the other ones. We're gonna finish off. This will be our last discussion for the episode. So let's do it. What is an influencer, and how is it, Eric?
it's definitely not me. So I would bet that if you went with CGC, okay, and you said, folks, I'm gonna start working with them, you would probably keep the majority of your clientele.
and that's what made me think of it and ask the
Um,
question.
Now there's people who just like the tux. That's all they
Right.
have. They've invested thousands and thousands of dollars in the tux. Their collection is all tux, and they're not gonna start putting a new brand in there because it's not gonna match. And we all like it when our collections match, right? So uniformity is a big deal in collecting. So those people who say, I would love to stay with him, but it's gonna mess up my collection. So I get that. But I think you have earned a lot of quote followers, because of your business acumen. So I think if you went with CGC, the majority of the people would go, oh, if Brandon says this is a good deal and this is a good company and they do good work, and he's saying that, then I'm good with that. So I guess that would be an influence.
And that's what posed the question, because I
You
was
would
seeing
influence
people
them
in
to
the
go to a
chat and
different
everything,
company.
and I was just like,
Yeah.
I guess I just never looked at it because it was never intended that way. Like, even when the whole thing started, it wasn't something that I came out and said, hey, I'm gonna be a book submitter. It was people messaging, asking if we would do it. And so I guess looking back on it, sharing information, um, having debates or disputes with other people regarding them, uh, I guess some of that could have influenced people, but I never looked at myself that way. I didn't intend it that way. I didn't feel like it was, that, but I guess looking back on it, maybe it was. So
So let's incorporate some hashtag scholarship. Let's talk about, like, right now. I'll use the infamous AI overview from the Oracle of Knowledge. So let's look at what an influencer is according to them. I specified social media, by the way, since that's the one a lot of people think about. So I focused it in on that piece. So here's what they came up with. A social media influencer is an individual who's built a large and engaged following. We'll get back to that in a second. On social media platforms, and uses their influence to shape the opinions, behaviors, or purchasing decisions of their audience. Now, I think one important caveat here, and they do mention it at the end, because there's different levels of influencer based on follower count, like different size of followings and all that. But another piece is uses their influence to shape opinions, behaviors, or purchasing decisions of their audience. I'm going to expand that a little bit, because my opinion, as someone who follows the space and things like it in the past, it doesn't always have to be intentional. It can be inadvertent. It can be through the actions speak louder than words, as they say. It's not so much me saying, oh, this is the best one, you should all use this one. That it might not require that. It might be more a matter of, oh, I noticed you're using this now. You were using this other thing prior. Why is that? Oh, well, I tried it and I did this and I ran into this roadblock or had this problem or whatever. So now I'm using this because it makes more sense for me. But as a result of that, this other person then looks at that same thing and says, okay, I'd like to try that. You have an influencer is just someone who influences somebody. A lot of people get fixated on this idea that it has to be like mind control. It can be as simple as, okay, I respect your opinion. So what do you think about this? You ask the question, you answer the question, and the person actually decides to try it. Well, you might not be able to monetize it directly, but inadvertently you have influenced them simply because they asked you the question.
I guess in a sense of what you're talking about, and to steer it away from what I've done or Eric or anything, even you, I guess, like we talk about a lot of times, how this hobby goes about things and the market or the individual, the community dictates what is tops or what is best or whatever. And I guess in a sense, exactly what you're saying is why we've always asked the question, why do people bitch so much about PSA, but yet continue to obviously use them in a very high manner or pay a premium for that slab? And it's because so many people do it and it's become the norm. There's not any one single person out there saying PSA is best or you have to use PSA. It's a conglomerate of everybody, and they've established that as being the top company, the most expensive or whatever. So it's like a generalized influence because it's seen and talked about so often.
Yeah. Like, look, the reality is going into this, credibility and trust is one of the bullet points it has here. They build a reputation for authenticity, expertise, or authority within a particular area, earning the trust of their followers. That's a thing. And then in terms of that, the more engagement they are, the more likely to take action or adopt their recommendations. And again, it doesn't have to be you go out of your way to make recommendations. It can be somebody asked you a question, you answered it, but because they at least believe in kind of what you've been doing as far as other content you've been posting, they appreciate your candor, they'll listen to it. And even if that doesn't immediately coax them to doing that right that moment, they may weigh it as part of their decision making, and it might tip them over the edge and make them to make a certain choice. Oh, I hadn't heard about this thing, then I saw you using it, and then I decided to try it. I like it. Okay, great. In the end, you still made your own decision on whether you liked it or didn't like it, but you were shown it by somebody. You decided to try it because they seemed to like what it was. And then after that, okay, so yeah, I do that now. Zfolio is an example of that. Like if somebody, I've had a couple of people in the past reach out and say like, I hadn't heard the Zfolio thing, but I checked it out and yeah, I like it for some of my sets or for this, that, or the other thing.
So since Brian Gray, back to that little segment on him, and he was talking about influencers. So the little people in like Sam's Club and Costco that are sitting there with the little toothpicks and the little meat on them or the cheeses, they're influencers, right? Because we did not go there intentionally to buy those, but they influenced us to try it and then maybe make a purchase. So be damned with those influencers. Is that what we're supposed to say next time we go shopping?
Oh, I to be honest, Brandon, to be fair.
To be fair.
Ooh, nice. Yeah, high octave.
Nice. So that was a little extra. I appreciate that. You get the full impact of that on the video version, folks. Or you'll see it in 2 months. Good luck. But anyway, all right. So in that vein, though, I actually think they use mind control. Like if we're talking Costco, that's mind control. That's mind control shit. I'm sorry. That's not influence.
I know
but they are influencers. I don't by the definition.
I don't eat any of that stuff. I don't, like we said on Friday, I don't eat at buffets.
You don't eat anything. Eric walks into Costco with tin foil around his head.
No, I don't eat open food sitting out at a Costco. No, it's like, no, I'm not eating that crap.
How did you try your first chocolate stick?
I went to Dunkin' Donuts and someone bought it for me because I was little.
So you know how long? Like how long it's been?
Like my mom or grandmother or something.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So they. Oh wait. Are you saying Miss Kathy's an influencer?
She is. She influences me all the time. If you mean she bosses me around, tells me what to do, then yes, she's an influencer.
So you're saying Kathy is in leagues with Big Chocolate Stick?
Yeah, it's possible. I mean, why did I leave your live show last night?
Because you're trash. Sorry, go on.
No, because Mom said it was dinner time and she made soup.
Indeed.
And I said,
saying,
I gotta go.
I got big concerns here. Actually, in the since you brought it up in the vein, and believe it or not, I can actually circle this back around to actually this topic. Like I said, this will be our topic we're finishing up on. Okay, so let me ask the question. Same vein of what we were just talking about. There is a balancing act. Maybe we'll touch on it this way. We gave a very basic definition, kind of gave a little bit of nuance in the middle of it, but like an important thing is, I don't care what medium it is. I don't care what genre it is. I don't care how you want to try to put this. Once you build up an audience of any size, and once you have a bit of a platform, and I've been consistent on this point, once you have the platform, you have to kind of understand what it is you're doing with it, in the sense that you want to try to make sure that whatever message you're delivering is consistent with whatever it is you think that your mission statement is with the content you're making. If you're just making it to have fun with it, then that's fine. If you're trying to deliver a message, and the problem is when you're trying to create yourself as an authority or positioning yourself in that way so that other people will call you an authority, but you're playing into it, and then you decide to weigh in on topics. That's why I say sometimes you got to be careful. I do it for fun. We have a lot of fun with this, but people can take it or leave it. A lot of people have disagreed with things we said, and that's okay. And genuinely, I don't care. Not because it doesn't matter whether you agree or disagree with the opinion. Is that it's just an opinion. It's thrown out there. We'll usually give you rationale for it. Like even with the Brian Gray thing, where I summarized some of it. It was a 40-minute video. It was a 40-minute podcast episode. If you want to sit there, if you actually listen to it from beginning to end, you will get some of the additional nuances. You'll be able to hear his cadence and how he approached it and everything. I kind of had a little bit of fun with it, but I gave you a super high level. Like I literally gave you bullet points on bullet points. Like it's this small little description. That's all I gave you. If you want to get the proper full thing, always check that's why I always include links in the description to the full version. I would always recommend if you want to get the contrast and compare what we described to what was actually said, use the full version. That way you'll know exactly how it was said and the tone and all the rest of it. But I'll give you an example. I'm gonna have a little fun with this one. But it plays into this because it came up this past week. Our good friend, Jay Lee.
God, what are you going to do?
I'm going to simply read what it says, Eric.
Okay.
I am going to read. It says here, and again, reminding you about audiences, influence, and the use of such. So he decided to weigh in randomly, seemingly out of the blue, because I don't recall anybody explicitly asking him, but regardless, he felt the need to post this. This is on Instagram. It says, if Whatnot and Fanatics Live are breaking casinos, then let's be honest, your LCS is one too. Ripping wax has always been gambling, which I don't necessarily disagree with, but, and then this is the original way it was stated. Same odds, same risk, incorrect, which we'll get to in a second. Different vibe, different decor. It's not about where you rip, it is that you're ripping. Okay. By the way, hashtag breaking truths was one of the hashtags. I appreciate that. But what does it say in the edited version of the thing? Edited. The odds/risk are not the same. It can often be much different when the markup is higher in the overall group break than a single box in LCS. Yes. Go on. My apologies to anybody for that error in the original post. That's kind of an important error in the original post. And in the description, like in here in the comment section, a couple different people weighed in on it, including Burbank Cards. And they talk about, as a shop owner, I never get this argument. It's common for a product that's 450 at an LCS for steel box. It becomes 750 or more divided into slots, and with the odds of a favorable outcome declining when teams average 17 per when ripped by the customer, et cetera, et cetera. They're zero in common in my opinion, which is fine. He's a card dealer. It's different. The odds are different. So here's the thing. Part of it was that I get to chuckle. But the thing is, this is what I'm going to call an unforced error. Here's the thing. After you make the correction, you want to make a mea culpa and say, okay, yeah, it's not the same odds, my bad, whatever. But who prompted you to post this in the first place? Why did you need to weigh in on this specific thing? Which part of Jeremy Lee's sponsors plays into breaking specifically? Why does he need to defend breaking and make it comparable between an LCS and a breaking platform? As soon as you increase the price, yes, there is a gambling element. We agree that ripping wax is gambling. There are odds, there are stated odds. However, if the box is $100, it's different than the box is $1,000, especially if the odds are the same and the materials are the same. Because if we don't change the materials, then what you get out of it, $100 box, best you can do is, on average, you'll get $20 or $30 worth of cards. Okay, that kind of sucks. You lost about 80%. That's unfortunate. $1,000 box, best you can do is $20. Oh, that's really bad. That's horrifically bad. You've lost $980. Like, that's way worse. That's worse by a factor of 10.
If you buy a box off your local card at your local card shop, you get 100% of what is in it, whereas you are, picking a number or a team or whatever, however they set it up, where you are only going to get a portion of what's in it for, So yeah, I guess the odds are different that way also.
I'm going to take it another step here and just bear with me. There aren't as many out there, I'm sure, today as in the past. But to compare the two with online and, whatever platform of choice and breaking versus going into a shop. Eric mentioned you get 100% of the cards. There's still people that will buy boxes or blasters or whatever and try to complete a set. So at that point, they're not looking at it at all as a gamble because they're not chasing a hit. They're chasing to complete a set, which,
yeah, sure.
So you get where I'm going with that. I think and vice versa on a breaker's side of things, I know there are people that will buy their favorite team because they don't care about all the other cards and they only want the cards of their favorite team. But I think the majority, and this is why it's come up, so often, because he's not wrong, opening wax, period, has always been a gamble. No doubt about it. I think the majority, though, today is in it for the chase of the lottery ticket, the grand prize. So, if you want to call it that. So I don't think you could put one in the same. In fact, I don't even like the damn odds on the products anymore because we have so many different iterations of the same product and the odds change between all of them. You don't know. Let's just use a 101, for example. You have no clue. Like, it's a bigger issue of even trying to figure out what the hell, like, is it a blaster? Is it a mega? Is it this jumbo? Is it this giant? The hobby? What product, which box, allocation, iteration of the product is the 101 even going to be in? And then you break the odds down for each one of them. And it's like, I don't know of a mathematician out there, and there probably is one if they really wanted to, but us three, we're not going to sit there and take all of those numbers and everything and try to figure out what the actual odds are. So realistically, the odds are bullshit. They're just there for technicality reasons or legality reasons, but we don't really know what the true odds are because we never know actually where the damn 101 or the out of 5 or the out of 10 or whatever is even going to pop up. So
sure, no, I get it. But look, just so we all understand each other, the reason I shared that one was twofold. Number one, it made me laugh. It amused me greatly, and I got great personal joy from it, and it made Eric uncomfortable. That's the number one reason I did it.
What was the little thing that he added? Because you mentioned something about sponsors and jokingly in a serious manner for a second.
Yeah.
He tagged somebody, it looked like a username of Collectors MD. Is that supposed to be like an addiction helpline for?
It's someone that's kind of circled around a little bit. So now that is someone who is working on. It's kind of an organization, kind of a thing where they're starting to build out some materials for people that are getting kind of addicted to breaking, hobby stuff.
Addict. Okay.
Overbuying,
I just noticed that
breaking, stuff like that. Yeah.
Well, just a serious note for a second. From my background, I take this stuff a little more seriously than most due to my background. But just to say it, an addiction is an addiction is an addiction. It doesn't matter if it's, blackjack, alcohol, breaking. Um, the psychology is all the same. So you could have an addiction to collecting blue pens, if it starts checking off the boxes where your life starts getting ruined, and, it's a problem. So, I'm glad. I think it's great that, that there's some people out there that have probably gotten themselves in a hole, realized that it became a problem, and then said, hey, after we get ourselves worked out a little, maybe we can help some other people. And if Jeremy is tagging them and, and letting people know those people are out there to help, I think that's a good thing. So I like to hear that. That's a good positive thing. So, because I've said it 100 times, when I'm at work, I have seen people come in, max out a credit card, throw down another one. I've heard, all the stories about don't tell my wife, or, if my wife comes in here, don't tell her. I mean, whose wife comes into a card shop? One who's trying to, dictate, your husband's spending because he's bankrupting the family, So I've heard it all. I've seen addicts come in and just throwing down money and stuff and praying they're going to get a hit. It's horrible to watch.
So I don't know, so I'm not going to identify who they were, but I was at my LCS, the one that I drop off and pick up the grading stuff from, last Thursday. And I went in and there was 3 younger guys in there. And I didn't piece it together at first, but the minor league baseball team is down there in Fredericksburg, not far away from the shop. And one of the boys was wearing a Chicago White Sox shirt. So I pieced it together later. They were from the Kannapolis Cannonballers, who were in town to play Fredericksburg. But they were in there buying repacks, of all things. And one of them bought Pokemon. But the one boy, I don't know what he actually hit in the first repack, but it was enough to trade in to get the higher level of repack. And again, I didn't know at first that these were ball players, but he literally hit the card from the one, traded it in to get store credit to then get another repack to open it, and struck out. And after realizing that they're ball players and everything, and obviously low-level minor leagues, but he said, I'll probably be back tomorrow to get more. I just like the gamble. I wonder how, and that made me think, I wonder how many of the athletes know what the cards and the hobby and everything is about, and they actually also enjoy the gamble, and that's why they're outside of contracts and money and everything, but that's kind of why they go along with promoting it and everything, because they enjoy it themselves. They enjoy the gamble of it.
I think maybe the younger players, the ones that maybe been in the last, 5 to 8 years or so. But there was definitely a time in the past where these players had no concept of any of this sports card hobby stuff. They knew baseball cards existed. They knew they were on them. Worth, or companies and signings and stuff. They didn't get it, or want to really even be a part of it. Where these kids now came up collecting themselves, going to card shops, spending money, keeping track of how much the cards are worth, getting into breaks, doing all this stuff. And now all of a sudden they're got their own cards, or they're in the minor leagues, and they are still kids. So they're just doing their regular kid thing. And if they enjoyed breaking and going to the card shop and taking a gamble on what they could get when they were 14, well, now that they're 19.
Well, this particular one, and again, I don't know the players' names, so this isn't to throw anybody out there, but He made a mention to one of the employees there that he was born in 99. So he is 26, not necessarily a kid,
Yeah.
and they are a low A ball club. So again, not to throw shade at anybody, but at 26 years old and being low A minor leagues, I don't know that he's got the path set up to make the majors and millions of dollars. So
No, he'd be there already.
yeah, especially at 26. So
Yeah, he'd be there.
So I want to make sure though, and we can definitely revisit this conversation, but I want to make sure that, and the points are valid, but I want to make sure we don't lose sight, because really the reason I brought it up has nothing to do with the actual gambling element. It has nothing to do with the addiction element. It has nothing to do with any of that. All that is completely valid.
it was
The
the
reason
two,
I brought it up,
the
the
comparison.
reason I brought it up was the twofer.
Yeah.
Yeah. The first one was the reason I said, because it would make Eric uncomfortable and it was funny. But the second
But-
reason, no, hold on. But the second reason that I brought it up is because there was actually no reason to interject yourself. It wasn't a mid-flight part of a conversation. You initiated the conversation with the post. Now here's the important part. If it was somebody with 5 followers, we're not even talking about it.
No,
gives a
Jeremy
shit?
gets money off of Instagram, I'm sure.
Yeah, but the reality, the bigger issue though, is that it's someone who has a following.
Yeah.
He's got the YouTube channel that gets consistent viewership that a lot of people follow it. He's got the Instagram page where I think now his follower on count now, I think on that 10,000 followers on Instagram.
Yeah,
Okay,
so he's
that's
probably
pretty good.
monetized. It's an engaging post. The more comments, likes, all
I'm
that
not worried.
stuff.
I'm not worried about the rationale. But my point was that what I led, the preamble that I gave leading into it, is I said, as you build a platform, it becomes more important that you understand, because you were questioning, you were talking about how you didn't think of yourself as an influencer, but then the feedback you got kind of made you second guess it. But we're talking about one level. Now let me 10x it. Let me 100x it. Let me 1000x it. As we go further up the chain and the platform is heightened, it amplifies the voice that goes out. So then everything you say has to almost be, and this is a conversation I've had with some folks on YouTube, kind of offline, where I said, if you were, and the example I gave them was as a YouTuber, if you're a YouTuber and there's 50 subscribers, who gives a shit? Say whatever you want. Like, honestly, nobody's going to hear it for the most part, like whatever. And if somebody does by accident, it's like, you got 50 subscribers. At the end of the day, whatever, it'll kind of blow over and go away. But when you got 5,000 subscribers, 10,000, and as you go further up the chain and the platform gets a little bit bigger, your voice carries a little bit further. So now you got to start thinking about, okay, so should I be saying it, or is this the way I should be saying it? I no longer have as much latitude to be making unnecessary mistakes or unforced errors with it. The original post was, if Whatnot and Fanatics are live breaking casinos, let's be honest, your LCS is 1-2. Fine. Ripping Wax has always been gambling. Okay. The one line that people obviously that he counters was the mistake was same odds as if for same risk. Well, obviously that's wrong. We know it's not the same odds. It's not the same risk because we increase the price, therefore increasing the risk. Different vibe, different decor. Sure. It's not about where you rip. It's that you're ripping. Okay. So what is the purpose of this post though? We're saying it's an equivalency. We're saying that what Whatnot does is not any worse than an LCS. That's what the post is actually stating. The incorrect part about the odds, if I remove that line, I'm saying if Whatnot and Fanatics are breaking casinos, then let's be honest, your LCS is 1-2. So the LCS is exactly equivalent to what Whatnot is doing. It's no better, no worse. Do you agree with that premise, that statement? No better, no worse in any way, shape, or form. The fact that Whatnot can be accessed 24/7, the fact that I could do breaking at 3 a.m, try to go to an LCS at 3 a.m, Eric will be carried out by the police. That happens. But there is a difference. At the Whatnot, 24/7, 365, somebody will be up breaking. I can go in there and I can purchase into a break anytime, anywhere. The accessibility, the ease of use increases it. And of course, they're promoting the hell out of it. There's a Whatnot Breakers Pavilion at the National. They're in your face with it. Yes, LCS is selling the product. So here's the thing. I agree with the premise that ripping wax is always gambling because we've got odds, so yes, I agree with this premise, Floating Head. But where we fall apart is in the false equivalency between two different things where I've got massive accessibility in one and I may have some limited accessibility in the other. Because, here's another piece, my LCS might be out of the product. I might be interested in buying X product or whatever, but if the LCS is out of it, they're sold out. But somebody on Whatnot probably has it. Now the price keeps going up as it becomes a harder to get product, but as long as somebody has it on Whatnot, Eric, I can go there and buy in a break right now, right this minute. Even as we're speaking, I could do it on my phone, even while I'm talking to you. I can't be doing this while I'm going to an LCS.
Well, and this is kind of an irrelevant to what you're going after here, but the breaking on Whatnot and stuff sometimes too doesn't even have set prices.
Sure.
You know, they auction the teams.
An auction.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I mean, even there, let's tinfoil hat it a second. I've questioned if they don't have, like, call them what you will, but people in the crowd or in the chat that are even sitting over next to them that are on there bidding it up to, you know, so they can get a decent amount for the team. So there's that element to it as well. So
yeah. And like I said, my bottom line on that is this. At the end of the day, it was fun to poke fun at it because, again, it's fun for me always, for my reasons. But if I took his name off and I put somebody else's name with an equivalent follower count, I'd be asking the same question. First of all, why are you the one posting that? Fine, you want to engage it, you want to create a conversation, I guess, okay, but you know, fine, whatever. But if that's the angle you want to go in, then I need you to be more clear in your thesis. You can't get something that obvious wrong. And I'm not saying you have to be perfect. I want to be clear about that. I'm not telling you have to be perfect or anybody else. But I'm saying the bigger the platform gets, the lesser the margin for error is, Eric. My point is, as you get a bigger platform and more people listen to you, as you become a greater influencer, your responsibility level goes up. And that's the part that doesn't seem to be registering with anybody. People keep acting like we can say the same stuff we wanted to say when no one was listening. In the grand scheme of things, very few people listen to what's going on here. And yet, I will still get feedback from people who are listening. And yet, there are still people, there are industry people who will listen. There are people who just hang it out on YouTube and check it out and watch it. So even though I'll say a lot of stuff that I'll have a lot of fun with, I am willing to back everything I'm saying. I don't then need to edit my post to say, oh, I got a fundamentally important piece of this wrong because I just sent this without thinking twice. So what? And I have a platform a fraction of the size. And even then, I still think about it before I post it. When I complete this, I've talked about this before. When I complete this, when I put it in the editing machine, I'm going to listen to the entirety of this podcast from beginning to end. And if I'm not satisfied that something was conveyed in a way that I'm comfortable with, it might hit the editing room floor. That very rarely happens. But if I'm not comfortable with something after the fact, I have one more chance to listen through it through and be comfortable with it. I'm comfortable with what I'm saying because I'm not picking specifically on him, even though it's funny. But it's not the first time he put his foot in his mouth and then had to make a correction or an edit or whatever. It's not the first time. It's not even the 100th time. But he's got a bigger platform. Whether I agree with it or not doesn't actually matter. It doesn't matter. People do listen. People listen to what he has to say. People listen on the weekly basis when he does his live stream. And people listen when he's checking out on social media. And again, here's the fun part. I don't even follow Jeremy on social media. I don't even follow. You know how I saw it? Somebody else posted it. And then the response to it was posted to it. And then a reaction to the response to it was posted. That's how I saw it. So Eric, in other words, it does get out there, even though I didn't go out of my way to find it. What does that tell you?
It tells me he's an influencer.
Correct. So do you agree, though, with my premise that as you get further up the chain and your megaphone gets bigger and the sound emits further out there, then you do need to at least think a little bit more about what you're saying, also how you're messaging it. Yeah. At least look at it.
Yeah, I agree. And I believe this no matter who it is, whether it's someone that I have a friendly relationship with or not. What we've been discussing over the last weeks and months with some influencers doing and saying and participating in things that we agree are just horrible, versus throwing out an opinion about how someone feels about breaking versus LCSs, whether they're right or wrong, just to start a conversation and get hits as an influencer on you. I don't know, it's a little bit different. Like I some people like, and I'm not saying you are doing this by any means, because I think you're being fair, surprisingly.
I was surprised too, Brandon. I was very proud of myself.
Yeah.
I got to be honest. I was very man of peace there. I felt it.
I
Right here.
don't. I'm sure some people rage baited and went crazy and called them stupid and whatever else, because we had that little incident with me having some fun a couple of weeks ago, and some people just went absolutely insane on
You
the
mean when
internet.
you discussed your Lord and Savior Geoff Wilson?
Well, yeah, the guy's the GOAT, so there you go. So I mean, and then he's able to come back and just be like, yeah, now that you mention it, I reevaluated my opinion on something, and yeah, I could see that. I just don't see anything particularly wrong with that. I guess because I get more infuriated with some of the other things that are said and done by people over the years, that I think is just a bigger deal. But your premise is 100% correct. And the bigger your platform, the more responsible you have to be of what you say, do, and how you interact with people. Or else you risk losing that influence and those numbers that you have worked hard to get. And some people have. And some people have completely disappeared, like sports card therapists. Just one day he's talking in his car, and the next day he's gone.
I'm going to use an example that is taking it outside of the influencer realm, but I think just by some things that's been discussed right here, it plays into it. And also, it's a great example of, even if you don't have a big platform, you still should be mindful to your P's and Q's just in case you ever grow, if that is your intention. But you guys were, Carlos's point, the bigger your following, the more impactful what you say is. I don't think it's happened in a while, but we were having a string there for a bit where these professional athletes and people were digging up things that they had said maybe years prior to them ever being drafted into professional sports, and how big of an impact and how big of a, an uproar that these things would impose to them. So I thought that would be a great way to kind of compare it, because you might have started out as a 500 subscriber YouTube channel and we're saying some crazy things, but you had a couple of videos pop off and you get up to that 10K level or something, and people go back, and yeah, on YouTube you can hide your videos and all that, but it's the internet. There's always somebody out there that's probably watching and probably can dig up some details. So
yeah, stuff gets archived. We always make the joke on the Discord that I have a lot of clips that I've accumulated over time. That it was one came up randomly from someone that hadn't been in discussion in a long time. But it's just like stuff like that gets there, and sometimes you just sit back and you hold it because you're looking at it going like, hey, this might become relevant again someday. That's why I said I use that example, because it was a good case of a platform being built of it reached a point where that's why I gave you that specific example. I'm not even specifically following Jay Lee, but I got it through a response to a response, because it circulates. Because again, you do have a following. So if you have a following, somebody else is following you. Therefore, they see the post. Therefore, they share the post. Hey, did you see what so-and-so said about this? And blah, blah, blah. And that gets around, and eventually somebody makes a video about it. And that's how it came across my feed. I also got it in my Instagram from stories. A couple of people shared it in their stories.
And a tip for anybody, and Carlos, I know you will understand what I'm saying here. The more incorrect or improper or whatever, the more bad that your statement or post or comment is, the more and faster it's going to be shared around.
Oh yeah, totally.
Yeah. The worse your post is, or the worse your video or whatever you say is, the quicker it's going to spread.
Like Jeff Wilson's the GOAT.
Wow. But that bottom line on that was the reason I thought it was funny is that, and maybe this would be a good just general statement that I always make, is that whenever it comes to something like that and someone posts something like that, regardless of level, the first question should be why. In this case, I will tell you the why, because it made me laugh. and because I saw a wonderful opportunity to cackle, and I am a fan of the Schadenfreude. I admit it.
You are.
I am. It is truth. But that's my reason. That's my why. Otherwise, I don't care. Again, if it's somebody who has 5 followers, really, what would be the point? It could be the exact same post, verbatim, letter by letter. And if it's a 5 follower account, why are we bothering with it? We're not. Well, guess what? It also wouldn't come across my feed, would it? Nope, probably not. And that's just the way it is. Further up the food chain, you got to be more careful. That's the advice that I gave to the person on the YouTube thing. I said the problem is, whereas before you thought you could get away with it because you were a small channel back then, now more people are listening. Now more people are actually hearing what you're saying. So when you get too far out of pocket, well, then guess what? You're going to get called on it. That's just the way it is. That's the consequences. You wanted to build a bigger platform. You want to be the man. You want to have the 47 sponsorships. Well, guess what? That comes with it too. That all comes. The sponsors came because you had the platform. And as you built the platform, you had a bigger audience. As it had the bigger audience, they're listening to what you're saying. And if they're listening to what you're saying, you're an influencer. And if you're an influencer, then that brings in the additional scrutiny that comes with you have to be actually a little bit more clear about what your message is. Whatever you think your message is going to be, you have to be even more clear about it. You have to be more clear about why you're trying to deliver this message. Why you're giving me this message today. What specifically prompted you to hit this? Maybe you need to give that context, or just be super clear. Measure twice and cut once. Look at your message that you're about to post and ask yourself, is this coming off exactly the way that I want it to come off? If the answer is yes, okay, great, hit post. Right? Shouldn't be anything wrong at that point. If you thought about it and you're comfortable with it and you're good, then you're probably delivering the message you want to deliver. You're probably all right. And I think that's it for that one. Anything else we want to give on that thought?
Jeff Wilson's the GOAT.
Indeed, indeed. Well, on that bombshell, that's it for this episode, 135 of the BIC podcast. More videos coming up on the channel. Live streams on Friday at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, including this Friday, the 4th of July, is Eric Condemns America.
No, not gonna. No.
The thumbnail will be Eric Hates America for 4 hours.
No, pretty much Eric likes America. Yeah.
I don't know. Listen, again, if you check out the Patreon, you'd find out the slanderous thing Eric said about America.
No.
I can't even repeat those words.
No.
I'm not even in America, and I would get canceled if I repeated the words that came out of his mouth.
I'm kind of pro-America. Yeah, I'm kind of a big fan.
In public, I'm sure you are. But you can make sure to include comments in the comment section, because obviously we will read them. We appreciate the engagement. And you can hit the like button, because then Eric can tell us all. Because remember, Eric pays for the like button. Somebody else could pay for the like button, but as far as Eric is concerned,
well, guess what? Because you're poor.
We can't afford to pay for the like button, so Eric has to do it for us.
Yeah.
I think we discovered tonight why Eric voluntarily pays a hefty premium for the like button, though.
Mm-hmm.
Here we go.
And that's for the write-off ability to reduce that millionaire tax.
Yeah, pretty much it.
Yeah.
Eric is complaining about this millionaire tax. It's like, after all the write-offs he gets, they pay him.
Yep.
I don't know what he's been complaining about.
He in poker terms, he exposed his hand tonight.
Oh, man. It all comes full circle. Amazing. Sensational.
I got to
That's it
leave
for
this
us.
crummy state so I don't have to pay the millionaire's tax then.
I don't think you're doing it right. See, Eric, if enough of you leave the state, then whoever stays becomes a trillionaire. They actually own everything. That's actually brilliant. Get out. Get out. Brandon, I will buy Massachusetts after I get rid of the riffraff. I'll own it all for a Klondike bar. And they'll be like, what happened? It's like, you avoided the millionaire's tax. It's like, I don't care about the tax. I own the state. I own everything. It's all mine now. I'm sending the Bruins to Quebec City where they belong. Moving on.
Fair
And on that bombshell, that's it. We look forward to the 10-time consecutive Stanley Cup winner, the Quebec City Bruins. It's going to be very exciting. It's going to be amazing. Just endless Stanley Cups, one after another. That's it. Eric, you can send all your hatred, and also send him a lot of hate mail based on his hatred of America, and ask him why he hates America. Send us into our Instagram.
Love America.
Brandon, Baubles and Ball Cards, also known associate of 540 Flips, and formerly ex-SGC bulk submitter. Much sadness. The final countdown has played and ended. Single tier. That's it for us. Next episode of
Everything
136.
shipped
Catch you.
out, delivered. All credits have been paid. It was a fun ride.
Indeed. Except for this one. We'll catch you in the next one.